Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning everyone. Yang berbahagia Associate Professor Dr. Adibah Binti Abdul Latif, our distinguished speaker for today's webinar. Fellow colleagues, professors, associate professors, doctors, brothers and sisters, welcome to today's webinar organized by the Professional Development Unit, PDU, of the Center for Professional Development, IIUM. Before we begin our session, let us seek blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for today's program to run smoothly and benefit all of us. I would like to invite everyone to recite Surah Al-Fatiha. Amin, Amin, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Once again, brothers and sisters, welcome to our webinar entitled Designing Effective Rubrics for Fair and Reliable Assessment. I am Dr. Muhammad Ashraf bin Rostam, the Deputy Director for the PDU CPD, and I will be the moderator for today. Assessment is a crucial part of the teaching and learning process, not only to measure students' performance, but also to ensure that our instructional goals are clearly achieved. In higher education today, there is an increasing emphasis on aligning our assessment methods with our course learning outcomes based on the OBE framework, so that what we evaluate truly reflects what students are expected to learn. One of the most effective tools to support this alignment is the use of well-designed rubrics. A clear and structured rubric not only guides students in understanding expectations, but also helps us to ensure fairness, consistency, and accuracy in grading. Thus, we hope that inshallah, by joining this webinar, we will be able to explain the essential components of an effective rubric and their alignment with CLOs, design clear and measurable rubrics that accurately assess student performance in direct alignment with the specified CLOs, and review existing assessment rubrics to improve the clarity, fairness, and CLO assessment alignment for consistency and reliable grading. Allow me to have the honor to read a brief introduction of our distinguished speaker. Associate Professor Dr. Adibah Abdul Latif is a senior lecturer in educational measurement at the School of Education, Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities, Universiti Teknologi Malaysia, UTM. She is currently the head of Department of Educational Studies and Behavioural Sciences. Her expertise include educational measurement, assessment, and innovation in education. She received the Anugerah Akademik Negara 2023, one of the prestigious awards in academic in Malaysia, in the Applied Literature and Applied Social Sciences category, as well as the UTM Teaching Award in 2023. Dr. Adibah has been involved as an expert consultant in programs, policy, and implementation at university level with the Ministry of Higher Education, the KPT, as the Ministry of Education Malaysia level, and with several international universities. She is also involved in the development of alternative assessment policy with KPT and serves as the head of panel for AKRI, Anugerah Khas YB Menteri Pendidikan, Reka Bentuk dan Penyampaian Inovatif, in the alternative assessment category. She has served as principal investigator and research team member for 88 research grants and has supervised and graduated 35 PhD and master students in education. She is also involved in developing educational innovations, some of which have been commercialized at the national as well as international levels. With Dr. Adibah's vast experience and impactful contributions, Alhamdulillah, we are honored to have her together with us today to share with us to be able to shape meaningful learning practices and inspire quality enhancement in higher education. Some important notes to all participants: CTD points will be awarded to those who fill in I10 recorded in Zoom attendance for a minimum of certain duration and fill in the evaluation form within 24 hours. We'll email to you the teaching material, YouTube recorded session, as well as the evaluation form. With that, inshallah, I would like to welcome our speaker to deliver the talk. Over to you, Dr. Adibah.
Okay, Shukran jazilan. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashram Rustam, as the Deputy Dean, right? Deputy Director, sorry.
Yes.
Deputy Director of the Center of Professional Development. Am I right?
Yes, true.
Okay, thank you, Doctor, and all the IIUM family, okay, for receiving me here. Inshallah, I will say that we will have a sharing session, okay, for the topic given. Okay, so inshallah, as I said, this is just 2 hours talk, and it is not kind of workshop. And because of the limited time, I prefer that this session will be more informal. I mean that if let's say anyone here has any questions, please do not hesitate. Just maybe you can raise your hand through the Zoom. We have raise hand or not here in
Yes,
icon. Raise
yes.
hand. I have also like okay. Like UTM, we are using Webex actually before this, but now we are moving to the Google Meet. Okay, sebagai langkah penjimatan. Because previously we subscribe Webex, it's like we pay like 12 million per year. So
Oh,
now that we remove that because KPT also subscribe the Gmeet, right? Google Meet and also Google Workspace. So we are just using that. So I'm not so familiar with Zoom, but I think inshallah with some little literate in technology, inshallah I think I can use the Zoom regardless of any platform, inshallah. Okay.
I'll
So
also
again,
remind you if there's any question in the chat box. Can I interrupt
yeah,
you? Yeah.
please. Yeah, maybe sometimes I cannot read
Yeah.
cannot what I cannot see it, or maybe sometimes maybe because of talking, okay, rarely look at the chat box. Thank you,
Sure.
Associate Professor Dr. Ashraf. But okay, I will share my screen. Okay, allow me to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen in the full screen, Doctor?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, again, Alhamdulillah, syukur ilallah, I can be together, although it is an virtual meeting with all of the IIUM family here. Last, I think I went to IIUM for the audit, okay, for the audit of program academic. And with me that time is brother Aizat. I know he is here because just now he's messaging me also. So happy to have all of you here, okay? So inshallah, the topic given to me for us to discuss together today is about designing effective rubric for fair and reliable assessment. Okay, when I see the letter, okay, I can see that there is a bracket showing intermediate there. So I believe that the participants who attend this course today, uh, all of you have a strong foundation or already have the basic about the assessment and particularly about the rubric, okay, because this is an intermediate level. So that is why the topic also is quite intermediate, okay, saying about the designing effective rubric for fair and reliable assessment. Okay, so I try to make this sharing is more to the question and answer approach, okay, which is many of my slide is actually questioning or maybe in form of questions, okay, which is I believe it is Q&A or the FAQ, frequently asked questions, which is I got during my presentation or my talk in another university or in my university. Okay, so first of all, we know that behind every score is a human being becoming something greater. So a good rubric does not just judge performance. Okay. Normally, when we look at the rubric, we see the marks and we think that we are judging that. Okay. But actually, it protects the dignity, guides growth, and gives every learner a fair chance to be seen for who they can be. In our teaching and learning session or the lecture session within 14 weeks or 15 weeks, okay, if we realize actually we are dealing more with the formative assessment rather than summative assessment. Okay, the summative assessment normally will be happen maximum 1 month. If let's say we are using the what you call that summative alternative assessment, which is we replace the final exam. Okay, but if we realize that the rest, okay, even maybe until week 14, we are dealing with the formative assessment. And some of us think that the rubric only will be used when we mark, okay, the student's task or student assignment or student's project, student's report, okay, which is actually, it is kind of the misconception of rubric usage. Okay, the rubric actually should be used within or throughout the semester. Okay, so it is not something that the rubric is to judge. No, the rubric is actually, it's like a bridge, okay, for the students to see, to look what is actually they have to perform, okay, how they can maximize their potential, and we give some kind of the, our expectation to them, and this is what we will help them to grow, okay, along the semester, right? So basically this is about a bit of theory, okay, or maybe the definition. So rubric actually come from the Latin word, okay, called as rubrica. Okay, so rubrica is means that the red ink, okay, the red ink. Okay, if we see that normally during the ancient origin and historical use, okay, they will use the red ink for something very important. Okay, even if let's say, okay, you see here, it's also use the red ink, okay, to guide or to have kind of the important content. Okay, if you see here, okay, I cannot move this, sorry, because I cannot see. Okay, right. Okay, historically, rubrics serve as highlights for headings and important stage direction. So now, okay, by using the rubrica words, we go for rubric for the modern educational assessment or modern assessment frameworks. So we use rubric because it is something that can guide students. Okay, we outline the specific criteria for the students for them to follow, okay, as a guideline, okay, and also the expectations, what they should do, okay, throughout the semester, especially when they are performing their assessment or task given by us. Okay, so of course, um, we are not the factory, okay, that produce the same students, same pattern, same the way of thinking. No, because human basically they are subjective. Okay, and because of this subjectivity, we also afraid that some lecturers are still maybe not know how to measure in the fair manner. Okay, especially we as a lecturer in under the KPT, we are bound with the assessment for the program learning outcome, okay, which is we have from the knowledge, cognitive, practical skills until the ethics and professionalism. Okay, so we do not want that all the lecturers are having a so big discrepancy about the operational definition uh, on the program learning outcome. That is why Malaysian qualification framework also already give a guideline. Okay, what is actually the operational definition for each program learning outcome, okay, the learning domain, okay, maybe some university call it as a learning domain, all right, and MQA also give the operation definition for each level, okay, each level, for example, from the certificate, okay, degree, master, and also PhD, okay. So by having the rubric actually, because we are also teaching the students not only in one section. Okay, normally we have so many students with few lecturers from the few sections. So we want to reduce the big discrepancies. Okay, the error. That is why we are using rubric, and we want that the lecturer have the shared understanding how to use the rubric. And I would say that rubric, again, I would say that rubric is actually play a vital role in the formative assessment compared to the summative assessment. Okay, so now I start with the question. So many lecturers ask me, actually, when exactly we should develop the rubric? Okay, so basically the rubric should be developed before the semester start. Okay, because before the semester start, we, with our panel, we will sit together, okay, and then we will discuss what type of assessment that we will use. Are we going to revise our course learning outcome? Okay, are you sure that this assessment really can measure this program learning outcome? Are you sure that this task is really aligned with the CLO and PLO? Okay, everything we will discuss before the first week of the kuliah. Okay, so I'm not so sure about the practice in IIUM, but in our case, we have to prepare all the so-called admin, okay, the admin work for the class, the management things about the rubric, about the table of specification. It's not the final exam question, but at least the table of specification. If you can finish the final exam before the semester started, it is the best. Okay, but normally we make it compulsory for the lecturer only to provide the table of specification at the beginning of the semester. Okay, because from the table of specification, actually, we can scaffold, okay, the students. So when they perform their final exam, at least we already provide the good we design a good learning and teaching strategies, which is its scaffold to the summative assessment. Okay, so the best to develop the rubric is actually together when we develop and design the assessment, which is happened before the semester. So in the semester, at the beginning of the semester, which is week 1, okay, it is actually compulsory for us to give all the assessment task, the course information, and together with the rubric. And the rubric is only for the formative rubric. Okay, I mean that if let's say you are using the summative alternative assessment, okay, or some universities call it as a final examination equivalent project, okay, which is there is no traditional final exam anymore, okay, for certain courses. So that one, the rubric should not be exposed during the first week of the semester. Okay, that one actually have their own timeline. Okay, normally the best practice, the lecturer will show the summative rubric during the 13th week of kuliah, okay, which is they have like 1 month for them to perform that particular FEEP, which is final examination equivalent project, or some university call it as the summative alternative assessment. Okay, so to answer this question, we should prepare the rubric before the semester, right? Okay, the question number 2. Why always rubric? Is there is no other instrument that can we use in our classroom? Okay, so basically, yes, there is many actually we call as the instrument. Okay, in education, we also call that as instrument, not only in the lab and apparatus and so on and so forth. Okay, but depending on the purpose of assessment. And rubric has been widely used because based on the research, it is one of the best instruments to measure the students' progress learning. That is why rubric is very widely used in education. Okay, so beside the rubric, actually, we had kind of example like checklist. Okay, this is checklist. But if we see that checklist is normally have only yes and no, there is only 2 range. The continuum is so small, either yes and either no. And checklist is normally more appropriate for compliance. It's not for the student's progress. Okay, we also have the rating scales. Okay, rating scale also can be used in formative assessment. Okay, but why it is not so widely used for the assessing the students' assignments, students' progress. It is because if you see there is no description, okay, in which of the scale. Okay, number 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, or don't know. The lecturer maybe doesn't know or maybe don't have any evidence to measure students' performance. Okay, and this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, okay, especially for those who are maybe new in education, new in lectures. So maybe they will quite confused. What is actually 5 means? Okay, what is the 4? How to differentiate between 5 and 4? Okay, what is the criteria for 5 and 4? Okay, that is why if you look rubric, okay, we have the description for each skill. That is why a rubric is more giving the better idea, not only for the students, but also for the lecturer when they want to evaluate or assess students' work or performance. Okay. And then we have also answer scheme. So answer schemes normally is more suitable or appropriate for the traditional assessment. Okay, for example, final examination, midterm quiz, tutorial, okay, test. Okay, normally we will look for the answer scheme. So of course, for the alternative assessment, answer scheme is not appropriate. And majority of our formative assessment actually dealing with the alternative assessment. Okay, that is why a rubric is more suitable, okay, compared to the answer scheme. Okay, we also have the observation form. Okay, observation form, the thing is the observation form means that you will take so much time to observe. Okay, but it's still okay if let's say you have a small class. An observation form normally you must be there to observe and to evaluate. Okay, and you also maybe can pass to the peer assessment, which is the peer will observe, okay, the other peer. So in that case, if let's say your task is something to be observed, for example, maybe in our field, for example, in education, we have the micro teaching. So of course, for micro teaching, the lecturer will observe how the students will teach in front of the other students. So that one observation form is maybe better compared to the rubric because it is easier to tick and it is actually not to evaluate. Okay, it is actually to see the progress, okay, for that particular time. So if you have the rubric, sometimes rubric have a quite long description, okay, and especially if you are not familiar with the rubric or if you are judging something, evaluate something, one competition, okay, so having the simple but uh comprehensive, simple, but it's quite what you call that, the meaning is there, so it's easier for you actually to use, okay, compared if you are using the rubric. Okay, but somehow in the university again we are looking for the process, the formative development of the students. So of course rubric is better than observation form because the observation form normally is for the task which is have someone to observe, and we are not observing the students all the time. Okay, sometimes they are also assessing themselves, and we can observe the evidence rather than observing how they do, okay, in the real time. Okay, we also have the anecdotal note. So anecdotal note is very subjective. It's also sometimes coming with the observation task, which is you will write what the students will do. And anecdotal notes actually is quite well known to be used in the kindergarten or primary schools level. Okay, because in our case we have quite many students. Okay, unless if let's say you have a small class, or maybe for your supervision students, then you can go for the anecdotal note. But again, sometimes the anecdotal note, because there is no anchor for you uh, there is no anchor means that with the PLO and so on. So sometimes the notes will be quite subjective and not directed to the program learning outcome or course learning outcome that we want to measure. Okay. So that is why now, of course, there are critics about the rubric. Okay, some of them say that using rubric will make the students not creative. Using a rubric is like uh, you are looking at the holistic assessment, right? But there is also a research shows that there are many research shows that rubric helps students significantly, especially about their performance in the classroom. Okay. So the question number 3. A rubric only used to measure formative assessment or formative task. Okay, of course, when I say the formative assessment, there is a task that related to the assessment. Because I keep saying that it is good for formative, it is good for formative. I'm saying that because the formative phase is more important compared to the summative phase in the learning and teaching. Okay, that is why we should emphasize on formative because the formative phase is the phase where we help students to develop their skills, develop their knowledge, and also to infuse the value to them compared to the summative. But it doesn't mean that the rubric only can be used for formative. Okay, it can be used for both, for formative and summative, especially if the summative assessment is replacing the final examination. Okay, there is no final exam. Because if you are using the final examination, the traditional final examination, I'm quite sure that you will use the answer scheme rather than using the rubric. Okay, so rubric are not only for formative assessment, they can be used in both formative and summative. The difference lies in whether it emphasizes on improvement during learning, which is referred to the formative, or final judgment of achievement, which is referred to summative, or maybe you are using for both. You have summative and formative using rubric. Okay, so now we know that rubric can be used for both formative and summative assessment. Okay, so number 4, can rubric measure both the process and the product? So of course, this is related to the previous questions. Okay, because process is very synonym with the formative, and product is actually very synonym with the summative. Okay, which is the outcome-based education is actually emphasizing the process. That is why the name is outcome rather than output, because output actually emphasize on the product. So, of course, if rubrics can be assessed for both formative and summative, so for sure it also can be used to measure the process and to measure the product. In fact, many of the lecturers, okay, when we perform an audit, we can see that although that particular task is formative, but when we look at the rubric, we can see that the rubric is actually measuring the product rather than the process. Okay, for example, we want to measure students' cognitive skills and also, let's say, the interpersonal skills. Okay, we are measuring them, let's say, through the portfolio. Okay, we want to see how they can use their cognitive to do the reflection, to solve a problem, to predict what will be happen. The metacognition part, we want to measure through the evidence of the, what you call that, portfolio. Okay, so the rubric actually should show us the process of cognitive level or cognitive process when they want to use the when they are given certain problem or certain issue that they will compile in the portfolio. But what happened when we check the portfolio, okay, sorry, when we check the rubric, we can see that the rubric is measuring the portfolio rather than measuring the process of cognitive development. Okay, supposed to be the rubric measuring the learning outcome, not measuring the product if it is for the assessment, formative assessment task. Okay, so that is why sometimes when we look at the rubric, it is about like formatting, it is about the how many references that you want students to refer, right? So that one is actually you are measuring the portfolio, you are measuring the product, okay, or measuring if let's say your final product is prototype, okay, so you are measuring the prototype, you are developing the prototype rather than you are developing the human skill, which is the students. Okay, so this is very important to make sure that the descriptions in the rubric, which is referred to the formative assessment, must be reflect to the process of development of the particular learning outcome that we want to develop. For example, if it is cognitive, then should be the process of thinking, problem solving, analytical thinking, anticipatory thinking, if practical skills, so it should be show how that particular assessment, okay, can make or can help the students, okay, to be more proficient about certain skills. Okay, and if let's say about the communication skills, okay, it's about to guide them what are the process that they should experience to improve their communication skills or other generic skills like personal skills, interpersonal skills, entrepreneurial skills, leadership, ethics, and so on and so forth. All right. So it is not about the product. Okay. But somehow it can measure the product. So the best time actually to measure the product, okay, of course, during the summative assessment. And another thing is actually when we measure let's say we are become the jury. or an auditor. Okay, actually the best rubric for that time is the product-based rubric. Okay, which is we will see later. We call as the holistic rubric. So for the summative assessment, for the summative task, or maybe for the final product, yes, you can measure the product. Okay, compared to the students' progress. Okay, for example, in final examination, right? You also actually measuring the students' work answer sheets. Okay, of course in the answer sheet there is a process of thinking and so on and so forth. But as long as they can provide the correct answer, you will give the answer correct. Although you feel like, the student in the classroom, she or he can perform well. But why in the final exam the students cannot give the good answer? But still you have to mark fairly with the not good answer. Although the students in the classroom, you see that they can answer the question during the formative or before they enter the final examination hall. So we still have to give the mark for the answer that given during the final exam. Okay, so that is actually the difference between the formative and summative. So
So, Doctor,
when we want to,
sorry,
yeah,
Doctor.
and the question.
Yeah, there's one question. Maybe you would like to respond on how about the questions based on case studies?
Okay, right. Okay, first, okay. If it is the formative assessment, it's same. Okay, I believe that when you give the case study, okay, the PLO that's suitable for you to measure using that particular task, which is case study, okay, is a cognitive, the PLO 1 or PLO 2. Or maybe PLO 9, which is the personal skills, lifelong learning. Or if let's say you want to integrate the ethics, it should be okay also. So again, for the case study, of course, if let's say the case study is more on technical, so go for the process. Okay, rather than you look for the correct and wrong answer during the formative process in the classroom, you also will guide them, okay, how actually they analyzing, how they should use the theory, how they actually have to triangulate, okay, the information to answer that particular case study. Again, the process. Okay, but if it is the case study during the final examination, okay, so that one is still considered as a traditional. If the case study is only like a paper, they have to sit and then they have to think and answer. That one still considered as a traditional exam. But if the case study, you give students the case study, you ask them maybe to go for interview, you ask them maybe to have a short investigation, okay, towards certain industry within 3 weeks. So that one can be called as the summative alternative assessment or final examination equivalent project. And that one, again, also should be mapping to the PLO. But for that particular case, which is the summative assessment, that one you are measuring more on the product, okay, the report, rather than the process of thinking. Okay, rather than you don't I mean that you do not so much care about the how they find the maybe the industry, okay, how they learn how to get the triangulation from the information from the many resources, right? As long as there is an evidence in the case study, okay, I will give you a mark based on the product, okay, rather than the process. So case study can be both formative and summative, and also it can be either traditional or alternative assessment. Okay, depends on how you perform that particular task. Okay, if in the classroom you do the case study, just only they have to look, read, and answer it like an open book. So it's considered as a traditional. But if that kind of case study, you give the case study and you ask them to go to the library, to go to do the interview, to go for certain industry, then it can be treated as a alternative assessment. Okay. Okay. Is it okay? Is it answering the questions,
Yep, yes.
Doctor?
And then I think the person who asked this question said, okay, noted. Thank you, Prof. There's
Okay.
another question, maybe quite related. Alternative assessment can measure process or product.
Okay, alternative assessment can measure both. Okay, that is why Okay. It depends actually on the okay, that's why in our course information, we have two things. The first one we call as the formative assessment. The second one we call as the final assessment. Okay. The most important differences between the formative or process and summative or product is, okay, the formative part, which is the process, always allow the student to improve their performance. And the keyword here, we have to give the feedback. Okay, so if let's say we are giving them the assessment, the formative assessment task, for example, we give a project or a mini scale research, for example. So means that they have to show us the draft or the performance, okay, at the designated week that we or that we have agreed with them. Okay, for example, maybe okay, please do some small scale of reports or maybe one infographic about what you have done in week, let's say 2, 4, 6, 8, and so on and so forth until the final submission. Okay, so in that case, it is actually the formative assessment because we allow students to improve and we guide them from time to time. Okay, but if let's say the summative assessment, okay, we actually want to judge them and we will not guide them anymore. Like in final examination, we only want to know either they can perform, they can master what they have learned for one semester. So of course, we will not help them during examination. So it same goes if let's say we are using summative alternative assessment, okay, or some universities call it as the final examination equivalent project. In case actually, what always happen in the university, within week 13, you will give the questions, okay, the task that they will do. You also will give some rubric, but you only give the rubric as a guide. If let's say the student have done that week 14, week 15, okay, because they have to submit week 16, for example, you cannot give the feedback for that particular work because that one is actually for the summative judgment. So again, the answer is alternative assessment can use to measure both formative and summative assessment. Okay, the answer, the difference is only formative. We can give feedback, you guide, they can improve. But summative, you only want to judge and uh, you cannot give the feedback for that particular work. Okay, it's nothing to improve. It's like one time effort or one time attempt only. Okay. Okay, Dr. Ashraf, is there any questions?
Yep,
Is
that's
it okay?
yep. No more
All
questions.
right. Okay. I mean that if let's say, okay, if let's say the lecturer still maybe want the further clarification, you just say that. So maybe I can talk with the lecturer, online. Maybe have something that I want to ask them.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you so much for the questions. Okay. It means that you are participating well. Thank you. So this is actually when we want to measure the students using the rubric, these are the things that we should be able to give the feedback, okay, during the formative assessment. Okay, first, in the process, we want to see how our assessment can make the students, okay, to do the investigations, how they can do the discussion or problem solving. Then we can see either it is at the level 1, 2, 3, or 4. Okay, so how they plan the task, okay, plan the task, how, okay, and how about their level of engagement and their intellectual effort. This is all the process. Okay, how they use the strategies, how they do the reflection, how they collaborate, team working with other friends, and how they improve based on the feedback that you and the peers give them. So this is the process, and of course the process will be differ according to the learning outcome. Okay, for example, if let's say you are measuring the personal learning, okay, sorry, personal skills, okay. So personal skills is about the lifelong learning. Okay, so if let's say the personal skills there means that you should know the process first of all, how they should get the authority resources, and then how they triangulate the resources, okay, and then how they learn from the resources, okay, and then how they feel like enthusiastic to get more resources. This is lifelong learning. So all the process actually should be measured and should be described in your rubric. Okay. But if let's say it is a product, okay, so of course it depends on the output that you want to measure. Either it is a report, okay, presentation, prototype, video, portfolio, any practical work result or lab work results, and also the module. So in this case, normally you will measure the module. Sorry, you measure the product. Okay, and if let's say you do one assessment, so the assessment, of course, you want to measure the formative part, but you also want to measure the module. Okay, let's say I want to ask my students, okay, to go to schools, do the research, and give me your report. Okay, your proposal report. So, of course, the biggest part, I will look at the formative part. Okay, but I still want to give the score for the report, the final report. Yes, I can, but provided the score for the final report is not too big. I would say maybe not more than 10%. Okay, so the rest should be reflect to the process of formative achievement compared to the output. Okay, because output normally we already have the portion under the final assessment. Either it is final examination or summative alternative assessment. And don't be surprised if let's say you are using quizzes or test or tutorial. Okay, which is of course 3 of them are the traditional assessment. But if let's say you are using them for one time only, which is there is no improvement or second chance for them to do the quiz, tutorial, or test, then all of these 3 should be placed in your course information under final assessment, under the summative part, not at the formative part. Okay, because in this case, these 3 assessment, okay, is actually the summative one, which is you don't give the chance to the students to improve. But if let's say you are doing quiz, but you give an opportunity for students, okay, you give the feedback from the quiz, and later on you say, okay, I will conduct another quiz by next 3 months or next 3 weeks, sorry. Okay, so I will see how you perform for that particular quiz. So if let's say you are performing better, so I will take your second score compared to the first quiz. Then this one you can claim as the formative assessment, although it is traditional, and you can put at the formative assessment in your course information. Okay. Okay. Question number 5, right? So now we go for the rubric. Okay, now because we go to the heart of the content. So what components should be included in a rubric? So I am very sure all of us are very familiar about the rubric. Okay, how is actually the rubric look like? Okay, so basically, there are 3 most important things. Okay, which is the criteria or component. Okay, the scale and also the description. That is the 3 main component. Okay, somehow from the literature, it will say that it also have the weightage. Okay, and I also encourage you actually to have the weightage in your rubric, unless you feel that all the component, all the criteria are having same weights, or all of them are same in terms of the importance or significance toward the assessment that you give to the students. Okay. So basically, we have criteria, scale, descriptors, and weight. Okay. And you can see, I'm very sorry, this is in Bahasa Melayu. Okay, because tak sempat pula tukar part ni. Alright. So let's say I have the project and my PLO is kepimpinan, leadership. Okay, leadership. So of course, this is the criteria of leadership. Okay, which is the strategy and the planning for the leadership, your charismatic, okay, and also your responsibility. Okay, so this is actually the construct or criteria which is should be based either from the operational definition given from your university, or you can refer also to the operational definition from the Malaysian Qualification Framework booklet or document, or maybe if let's say you don't have any which is not suitable for your task, you can do by your literature review. Okay, what you think you need to assess from the task. Okay, still can. Okay, for example, here is a leadership. And if you can see here, okay, this is actually the process. Okay, for the strategy and also planning, okay, either I take the middle one, either the students can think strategically and they can well plan and they are confident to deliver to other friends in the classroom during presentation, so on and so forth. So all is this a process, okay? And this is we call as the descriptors. And this is the skill, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, later on we will go in detail about the skill. So this is just the framework, okay, how it should be look like. Normally you will see, or there is a construct, or sometimes people call as criteria, sometimes they call as component. Okay, no problem, because there are so many literature saying you can use many types of what istilah, the terminology here. Okay, and then of course the score also, actually there are so many literature saying that you can have a range or maybe like one single number like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and also the descriptors. So the descriptors is should be depends either formative or summative, which is if formative it should be more on the process here, but if summative it should be more on the product. Okay, so now,
Sorry,
okay,
Doctor, I could
yeah,
interrupt.
so
There's one
questions.
question, yeah. How much
Okay,
ratio in terms of percentage of formative or summative assessment
okay.
in best practice?
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Okay. First of all, you have to see also if let's say you are bound by the in professional body. Okay, because if I am not mistaken, for example, EAC, it had already stated that your final assessment should be not less than 50%. Okay. So if let's say your professional body say like that, for example, your final assessment, the summative assessment, if not less than 50%, I really hope that during your formative assessment, please do not so much give assessment towards the test, quiz, or tutorial. If you want to give, can, but ungraded. Why? Because 50% is already big actually. Okay, for the traditional assessment, especially if it is in form of final exam. Okay, so the rest, for example, the rest 50%, you make it as an assignment, you make it as a presentation or alternative assessment. Okay, so if you ask me by the literature and also by the best practice, I can see that for the final examination is actually not more than 40%. Okay, unless you are bounded again with the certain professional body. So 40%, because 40% means that you cannot give any chances for the students to improve. Enough 40%. Okay, in fact, in our faculty, okay, majority of our final exam is like 30% or 40%. Okay, sometimes there is no final exam. Okay, but we have the summative assessment, but is not in form of final exam. Okay, so for the formative, okay, the range, okay, the range should be like 60 to 80%. Okay, because the summative should be like 20 to 40%. So within that range. Okay, but again, if you have to comply with your professional body, so you have no choice, you have to follow. But please, for the formative assessment, do not make it more on the traditional assessment also. Because if you already have 50% for final exam, 20% for your test, 10% for your quiz, means that 80% is actually something that you are not preparing students or give the chance for the student to improve themselves. Only 20% of assignment, which is too small actually. Okay, because in the university, we are not to judge them. Okay, we are here actually to help them to build their skills, their knowledge, and also to embed the value. All right. Thank you. Is there any question, Dr. Ashraf?
Let me check.
Boleh?
At the moment,
Yang
yeah, there's one question. For the responsibility in the rubric, do you actually observe the discussion of the students?
Okay, that is very good. Okay, for your information, this scale is actually I developed for the service learning for our undergraduate office. So in this case, actually, the score given is actually by the peer assessment. Okay, not me as a lecturer. Okay, so that's why the score only 10%. You can see, the leadership is only 10%. Okay, because during the what you call sulam service learning, okay, during the service learning, if you realize that you as a lecturer, normally you will meet them only maybe during the class and also during the event. And sometimes maybe you will go with them for a certain process for the formality. Let's say nak jumpa menteri besar ke. So of course the lecturer should be there, right? To ask for some money, financial support, right? But the rest, if you realize they are doing the work at the hostel together with them at night, of course, they rarely do the work in the day. Okay, they discuss at night, and of course you are not. So in this case, peer assessment is more accurate actually, rather than the observation from you as a lecturer. Okay, so the lecturer, maybe you can go for another PLO, which is, for example, the communication skills, which is you can see during the classroom presentation or during they communicate with the villagers, or maybe the cognitive part, okay, which is normally how to design, okay, how to do the proposal, the good proposal, and so on and so forth. So tell you frankly, although this one is 40, 30, 30, but the composite score later on will be convert to 10% only. And the responsibility here is actually measured by the peer assessment. And in this case, actually, I'm doing the blind peer assessment. Okay. For example, this is Adibah. Adibah has a group. Okay. So Adibah has, in the group, has 5 students, okay, 5-member group. So I know that I've been observed, but I do not know who will evaluate me. Because I already give, like, so for example, maybe the one who will evaluate me is, let's say, Ashraf and also Aizat. So I don't know, Ashraf and Aizat will evaluate me. But I already said to Ashraf and Aizat, okay, you will evaluate Adibah. So Adibah also will evaluate any other members within the group. So that is what we call as the blind peer assessment. Okay, okay, that.
Okay, there's a follow-up question. What is the criteria frequently used to assess students' leadership quality in group works?
What is the criteria?
Frequently used to assess students' leadership quality in group works.
In group works. So the score will be given by group, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Of Yeah, because sometimes have work, sometimes have some assessment they perform in a group, but later on the lecturer will give the score individually. That also possible. But normally, if let's say your PLO is the interpersonal skills, normally of course you should give the mark for the group actually, because it is something for teamwork. Okay, so if you ask me about the group, okay, for the construct of the leadership, first, as I said, it depends on your task. Your task is actually asking them to only do a discussion, or they have to go outside, like physical aspect, to go for the performing something, or producing any product, or go to the kampung to do the sulam. Okay, first, that one is so different. So I would say that the construct, that is why many lecturers or many administrators ask me, why don't we use the same rubric for all the PLO? For example, for the leadership, and leadership is doing for the group. So my answer is no, we can't. We cannot. Okay, because actually there is also some part of these things I will explain later. Okay, but if you ask me, the criteria or the component for the interpersonal skills, I would say in group, okay, it will be depending on the task that you perform. Okay, and the second one, if let's say you want to use the MQF operational definition, which is have, okay, you can open the MQF guideline at the end. Okay, I think not like at the end sangat pun. Maybe page yang ke maybe 10, okay, the last 10 ones, okay, you can see there is a table for each learning domain, okay, from the knowledge until the ethics and responsibility, right? Ethics and professionalisms. Okay, there is the OD there. But the OD is, for me, is quite general. So that's why I said you also can use by literature. And of course, you can ask AI help. But I was also embed actually, okay, the AI prompt in my talk. Okay, maybe later on, from there, you can have some idea. And then, of course, with the AI help, you and also your panel, okay, and also your coordinator, penyelaras kursus, should be seated and discussed together. Either all the criteria is enough or not. And jangan banyak sangat lah, do not be too many, because maybe it will make you quite difficult to assess, and at the same time avoid the redundancy. Okay, so maybe I hold first, okay, the half of the answer, which is I can answer throughout the talk after this, okay, from the slide.
Okay.
Boleh, Dr. Ashraf?
Yep, please. Yeah.
Okay. Is there any questions? Any more questions?
All good at the moment, but can I just want to respond
Okay,
on
boleh.
the percentage you mentioned about formative and assessment. There's some questions asking whether, if let's say, should we include all topics for the 14 weeks in the final assessment? Can we just leave, for example, the first to fourth topic
And
covered in
understand.
formative? So is that doable?
Okay, that one is for summative, right?
Yeah, summative.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you. The question is good. First, depends on what types of item or what types of questions that you will use. If let's say you are using the multiple choice question, soalan objektif yang the student have to blacken the answer or choose the answer, which is normally the number of the item would be like maybe 50, 40, eh? That one, yes, that one is better for you to include all the topic with the significant content. Okay, although include all the topic, of course, you have to look at the significant content. But if let's say you are measuring using the essay or subjective, of course, you cannot measure all the topic, and it is not appropriate lah, because the subjective essay questions, normally you need a students to provide the answer longer because we want to see their creativity, okay, their problem solving towards the questions, and the score also is quite limited, all right? The time is very limited. So that is why it's not appropriate to include all the topics for the question like an essay or subjective item, all right? So in that case, actually, you see first your formative assessment. Your formative assessment mostly covering which topic? Okay, so maybe you can assess in the final examination, okay, the topic which is maybe too theoretical and cannot be assessed or not so appropriate to be assessed using alternative assessment. Okay, and that part you already covered with the formative assessment, which is you ask the students to perform the task to measure or to perform certain topics for that particular assessment. But let's say have 7 topics. Okay, the 4 topics maybe is covered by the formative assessment. So you have another 3 topics, which is quite important but very theoretical. So use these 3 topics for your final examination. Okay, the most important, look also at your CLO. Okay, normally at your CLO, if you want to measure the assessment using the final examination or summative assessment, okay, your CLO, it should be something according to your PLO2 or PLO1 only. Okay, unless it is alternative assessment. But if it is traditional assessment, final exam, so means that it should be something like cognitive or knowledge, because the rest you cannot see it through the written answer. Okay, so in case, you also have to look at your level of taxonomies. Okay, for cognitive, we have 6 level of Bloom taxonomy. Okay, from remembering, okay, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and also creating or synthesizing. Right. If let's say in your CLO, you already put C5, which is evaluating. So supposed to be your final examination, 50% of the questions cover C5. The rest of 50% can be C1 until C4 and should be no C6 in that particular questions. Okay, but if let's say you put C6, supposed to be 50% of your questions in your final exam cover C6. The rest 50% can be C1 until C5. Okay, so if let's say you said that in your CLO, the first CLO, let's say it will be measured by final exam. Okay, and then you put C4 there. But then when we look, your C4 only 20% from the whole item. So the rest 80% is C1, C2, C3. Or maybe a little bit sometimes have C5, C6. Okay, so that one is actually not so matched with the constructive alignment concept. So that is tambah sikit lah about constructive alignment. Doctor? Okay.
All right.
Okay,
I think that's all.
Okay, so thank you. I proceed. So from time to time, nanti Dr. Ashraf bantu saya ya. Baik. So what types of rubrics? As I said, I believe that everybody dah biasa with the types of rubric. Okay, just maybe the number 3 rubric, which is single point rubric. Maybe ada yang biasa and some of you maybe not, never see the single point rubric. So this is analytical rubric. Okay, if you can see the analytical rubric, okay, of course there is a criteria, there is a weight, okay, and also the scale. You see this type of scale, they give a range. For the scale 1, okay, the score is between 0 to 2, okay, until the scale 4, between 9 and 10. And if you see here, okay, it's actually looking at the process, okay, process, okay, this is the criteria. So this is analytical rubric, which is every single criteria will have the weights and will have the description, okay. On the other hand, for the holistic rubric, okay, all the criteria here actually will be embedded under one holistic descriptor. Okay, so this is actually more suitable if you are using or if you are measuring something on the summative, or as I said, if you are become the judge of the competition. Okay, if you realize sometimes if you become a judge in the competition, if you are using the analytical rubric, there is a chances, which is you see the product is very good, but when go to the analytical part, maybe the score will be lower than the product which is you think is moderate. Maybe in terms of documentation, there is a advantage for that particular product. But when you measure the product, should be the product itself. Okay, should be the product itself, because this is a competition. Okay, like people in the singing competition, right? Of course, you will choose singer with the best performance, suara sedap. Okay, and of course, like when you see, all of you will say, this is nice. This is nice in terms of delivery, in terms of their voice. But if let's say suddenly you use analytical rubric, sometimes the one that obviously nice, it becomes the tempat kedua or tempat ketiga. It's not win the competition. Why? Because you didn't see it as the holistic, okay, as a holistic evaluation. That is why if you want to know, if the teacher, which is the SPM examiner, they always, especially for the language teacher, cikgu bahasa Melayu, cikgu bahasa Inggeris, when they mark the composition, okay, language, okay, karangan bahasa Melayu ke bahasa Inggeris ke bahasa Arab ke, normally they will use the holistic descriptor. Okay, because they will get the experienced teacher, of course, like experienced kan, examiner kan, they will read the whole answer sheet first, okay, and then they will give accordingly to the mark, because they are expert already. Okay, they will not see one by one the grammar and then the content, the pendahuluan, okay, the penutup. No, they will read all and they will see the appropriateness, okay, between the quality of what they have read and also towards the rubric. Okay, somehow, the analytic rubric also can be used for summative, especially if the judge is maybe not so familiar also with the rubric, and also maybe you want to make sure that the judge are having the same language, means that the same perception towards certain things. Okay, because sometimes, let's say I become the judge of innovation. So I'm from education. Okay, some of the judge is from maybe the faculty of arts. Some of them is faculty of engineering. So of course, all of us are having a different philosophy. Okay, maybe the one with the arts, they will see how actually the beauty of the design. The engineering is more on how this product is really functionable, the structure is good, well. And me, I will see how this product will benefit the society. So different, that is why sometimes like three of us, because having a different philosophy, and also we are maybe not all of us actually we are expert in the certain things, then analytical rubric can be given to three of us, okay, to avoid the big discrepancies because of your own philosophy. But if you are the same experts, okay, you are measuring the same thing that under your expertise, then actually the holistic rubric will be better. But believe me that holistic rubric is rarely being used in higher education, but it's okay. Even if you are measuring the summative, you still can use the analytic, no problem. Okay, but somehow, because I also use the analytic rubric for the summative things. Sometimes what happened, like yesterday, actually, I went to one of the university in Malaysia to judge their Anugerah teaching awards, right? So when we use the analytic rubric, we can see that, actually, we don't want, actually, basically, when we did the interview, we know that this person should be the winner. But when we go to the analytical rubric, we can see that there is a mark that goes to the another candidate just because of the documentation. Okay, so we have to look holistically. So that's why the moderation is very important. Okay, after you judge something, because the perceptions of the rubric among the examiner, among the evaluator also is something that should influence the reliability of the score. Okay. And the third one is the single point rubric. Okay, single point rubric, normally you will only have three things. Okay, uh, this is actually the standard, the target standard, the minimum lah. We will say, if let's say this is A, this is B lah, and this is C. Okay, so the minimum thing that you want students at least to show during the process. Okay, for example, problem identification. At least they can clearly identify a focus, relevant, and researchable problem within an appropriate context. So I would say that the single point rubric ni, it's very useful for you to use during the formative or weekly feedback for the students. And this one actually should be developed not so much different with the main rubric, the analytic rubric that you will use to measure as a whole, okay, as a whole process. But also, you can use the analytical rubric only. No need the single point rubric. Also can. Okay, just I want to introduce another rubric, which is single point rubric, which is maybe easier to be assessed. Okay, let's say maybe if under the observation you want to assess either you want to observe like in the short time, right? So this one maybe is easier compared to the analytical rubric. Okay, but somehow this one is actually more appropriate if let's say you want to use to give the feedback from time to time for the students. So at least the students know either they have met the minimum requirement or not. Okay.
Lambat pula lah.
Uh, all right. Okay. Question number 7. Now we go also to the one of the objective that shows by Dr. Ashraf just now. So what are the steps of developing rubric? Okay, let's say actually now we have AI, but to tell you frankly, the soul of the rubric is actually coming from the lecturers who already understand what they want to measure. Okay, of course, these are the actually some of the literature that I refer to. Okay, the step, because if you look for AI, also AI can give you what are the steps for developing rubric. So for those who has an experience developing the rubric before AI coming, I believe you have more so, okay, and you understand more about developing rubric. Of course, AI will help you a lot. I'm also using AI when developing a rubric, but at least you already know before what actually should be happen at the back of the stage, okay, or beyond the curtain, can you already know, okay. So that is why it is important for you to experience developing rubric also without an AI. Okay, then you can check with AI. All right. So of course, the first one, always align your rubric with your learning outcome. Okay, anything. This is the concept or principle of outcome-based education and constructive alignment. Okay, always put your CLO and PLO, okay, in front of you when you want to plan for rubric, for assessment, for learning and teaching method. Always, okay? So you have to define the purpose and criteria which is aligned with your CLO and PLO. Okay, and then the second one, establish the performance level. Do you want like maybe from poor to excellence, maybe from apa lagi maybe from no to experts, okay? So anything, that one is okay. Actually, that one is matter of the labeling your skill, okay? But you should define and describe the distinct level of achievement. For example, you will say that, okay, I want the best student in my class who can develop a rubric, okay, which is can reflect the process, the criteria. You should say that. But of course, it should be reflect the learning outcome. Okay. For example, I take one learning outcome. Let's say the what you call that, the PLO2, because majority of us will assess the PLO2. Okay. So let's say the PLO2, I want finally my students, the highest one, they can, for example, predict the impact of the certain issue, let's say, towards the society, economic, politic, okay, education, right? And they can come out with the anticipatory thinking to solve the problem in the sustainable way. That is the highest one. Okay. So at least when you discuss with the panel, you know what is the highest performance that we want and the least one. This one later you will put under your descriptions, okay, in the rubric, okay? And then determine the scoring methodology, okay? So, of course, lah, this one, I think majority of us will choose for the analytical rubric. But again, you can try if you want to use the single point or holistic rubric for the assessment method if you are using the summative alternative assessment, all right? So these actually quite important things, or I will say important things, significant things, but not many lecturer do it during the curriculum review. Okay, during the curriculum review, normally maybe you will only look at the CLO, PLO, and maybe how to teach, what the assessment, right? But not many of us will give the rubric to the stakeholders. Okay, maybe we assume that stakeholders pun tak tahu rubric tu apa, macam mana nak tunjuk dia orang? Actually, no need to see this is rubric. Just ask them, do you think if I want to produce a professional like you, okay, this is actually the minimum standard, this is actually the highest standard, and this is the standard that we hope that they will not perform. Okay, or maybe the very minimum standard. Okay, like me myself, actually, I also like to put one as something not ada, tak ada. Because some lecturer will say one is null, means that there is no evidence at all, right? So if possible, because this is the process, the description for scale 1, if possible, is weak. There is something there, but weak. Not all no evidence, right? If no evidence means that you are not checking their works, because it should be an evidence during the process of giving a draft and process of feedback. Okay, no evidence because we are given 14 weeks to guide them. All right. So in my case, for example, I teach research methodology, one of the courses that I teach. So the final product, actually, I want them to come up with the proposal, okay, research proposal. Okay, and the PLO that I measure is, of course, one of them is PLO2. So let's say one of the component is in the proposal. Of course, I want them to know how to choose or select the issue. So in the week 2, okay, I will do the take-home task, which is in the classroom, I will teach within 30 minutes only. The rest is activity. Okay, so I will give them the issue, and the take-home task, I would say that, okay, I want you to give me an infographic. What are the issues that you will choose or you will select? Okay, but make sure that the task is not so heavy because you are going to mark every week. The students also have to do every week, right? So the second one, I said to them, I want you to come with the research objective from what we have discussed about the problem. Okay, come up with the research objective and research questions, not more than 3 slides. Slide 1 is research objective, slide 2 research questions, slide 3 research hypothesis. Don't more than that. Okay, believe me, as a subject matter expert in your course, it's not taking too much time actually to review or to check the work. Okay, but by giving that kind of assessment, the kind of task, it is actually scaffolding. Okay, it is actually scaffolding the task that you want them to complete, which is the research proposal. And that task, the mini task, I always call the micro task too, is actually the process where you develop their cognitive skills, which is that is supposed to be in the classroom, developing the learning outcome. Okay, what is the learning outcome? In that case, PLO2, which is cognitive skills. So every week, I will give some part of the proposal, okay, which is finally the final product, okay, in form of the chunk task, okay, which is from that chunk task too, okay, they will develop the PLO that I want them to develop, especially PLO2. Okay, so the good assessment actually the one that scaffold to the final product or final assessment. Okay, so go find the stakeholders, okay, ask them either the criteria, the description that you put there, is it too high, is it too low for that particular level, undergraduate, master or PhD, okay? And then of course, after let's say everybody say, okay, it's good enough, so you will administer, you will use for that particular semester, right? So make it as a pilot test, okay, to see how the rubric is function well, not only towards the students, but also the lecturer, especially if you have many sections, okay? So we should actually be trained of the rubric. We should have the shared understanding, okay, how to evaluate using the rubric. So this one also I will show you how, okay, because there is quite strict lecturer, lenient lecturer, which is sometimes, although there is a rubric, but even maybe when you mark, you didn't even see the rubric, okay? And of course, the continuous improvement. This continuous improvement not only happen at the end of the course, and of course, it's not only happen during the curriculum review. Okay, sometimes maybe in the middle of the semester, you see some problem, you can meet up with your panel and discuss. You will say that, I think this rubric should be revised next semester because I think the students cannot master the foundation part and this one is quite high for them. So for next semester, maybe we should change. Okay. And believe me, it is also good if you can involve the students, okay, to develop the rubric. Okay, other than the experts, also the student, just to see their, because sometimes maybe we think that this one is quite high, but for them, especially for the master student, they say, oh, this is too boring. This is something that we already use, always do in our daily work. Can I have something better than this? Can I learn something more other than this? Can you upgrade a bit your rubric? Yes. Okay, so that is why it's also good, okay, for you to involve the student, especially in the master level. Okay, maybe undergraduate, they are not so familiar, they are not so exposed to what happened in their professional world. But for master student and PhD students, especially for the practitioner, yes, you should involve them in the rubric development. Okay, not only among the panel. Okay, question number. Okay, silakan.
There's one question.
Boleh.
For a group project, one summative assessment on the report and one formative assessment based on peer assessment. The
Okay.
aim is to capture both process and product. The problem comes later when we are also asked to have the cost assessment report. Maybe it
Okay.
is just a matter of tweaking the system to produce
Yes.
the right calculation, but it is a
Correct.
headache to combine both marks in a camp.
Okay, correct. All right, I understand that. That one also happened in other universities. Okay, when they okay, in our place, okay, but I agree, that one is actually the system have to follow us. We have to humanize the system, all right? So it has happened in our faculty also, in our university. Okay, so what happened? we asked our Deputy Dean of Academic, okay, to bring to the Senate to discuss. Okay, because we don't want that we are being restricted just because of the system. All right. In our case, okay, we are the architecture of the system. You understand? Because we are the one who experience the learning and teaching process. So we should, in our case, for example, we report the cost assessment report according to the PLO. Okay, and under the PLO also there is a way where you can differentiate between the formative and summative assessment. So happened before, yes, it's having some problem. But then we give a feedback. Then Alhamdulillah, of course, they are born to be a programmer, right? They should able to correct what we want them to correct, right? Because they are the programmer. They should they should know how to, they are able to correct it. And we are, as an architecture of the things, of the process, we should advise. This one should be like this, and like this. If not, maybe you can do first in your Excel. Later on, maybe in your CQI, you can put that. Okay, because previously when they are still not correcting the system, okay, revising the system, what we did in the quota, in the box of reflection, we write that. Okay, we write that this actually the PLO is divided to two section, summative and formative, okay, but cannot be shown there. So some process, actually this is for product, okay, but end up, this is actually the KPI for that particular PLO. So you can put first at the notes of reflection or CQI, okay. Of course, the data would be stored at your computer, Excel, later on during, if let's say you want to enter the competition ke, you want to being audited ke, at least you have the evidence there. All right, Doctor?
Okay, we only have another 40 minutes. I saw your slides 58, so maybe we'll have to pause the Q&A and then maybe we'll focus on
Okay, tak
the
apa.
presentation.
Yeah, sekejap dia tu, insyaAllah. Okay, baik. We go to question number 8. Yeah, I have 20 questions actually. Okay, question number 8. Okay, so when we want to develop a rubric, okay, many lecturers ask me, actually we should base on CLO ke PLO, Okay, that's a very good answer, actually. A very good question, actually. Okay, why? Like this. First of all, we have to remember, when we develop the CLO actually reflecting the syllabus of the course, what we want students to achieve at the end of the semester, okay? But then, all CLO already being mapped to the PLO. Okay, either personal skills, communication skills, cognitive, practical skills, so on and so forth. All right. So when you want to develop the assessment, I go for assessment first. You should go for the PLO first. Okay, for example, the PLO asks you to measure the personal skills. Personal skills means that they have to go through the process of lifelong learning. So you determine the assessment, the type of assessment that can have an opportunity for students to develop their personal skill first, the type of assessment. For example, portfolio. So what should be written under the portfolio then goes to your CLO. Because CLO actually normally covering the content, the syllabus, rather than the PLO is bigger, okay, which is, it should be the assessment can measure the PLO. For example, if you are using the presentation to measure the PLO 9, which is the personal skills, that one is not so accurate, or it's quite troublesome how the presentation only want to measure the evidence of lifelong learning. So determine first the assessment, because the rubric will follow the assessment. Okay, so go for PLO first. And also the domain, either it is psychomotor, affective, or cognitive. But look at PLO first. Then no worries, after you already determine the types of assessment, then the content, what to be written there is actually the content, the syllabus, the CLO. Okay? Okay, right. Okay, this is an example. Okay, let's say I want to measure the PLO2, cognitive skills. Okay, and by the end of the course, students shall be able to analyze the quality of actual examination questions. Okay, this is my course with integrity. We have the word integrity here because MQA already ask us to embed the value-based education. Okay. By applying strategic and anticipatory thinking, we are having this because MQA are asking us, okay, to put the SDG, Sustainable Development, ESD, Educational Sustainable Development. Okay, so this is actually the mapping with the VBE and ESD. Okay, to determine their appropriateness, alignment, and potential implication for assessment practice. So the syllabus is here actually. The syllabus is where the students should be able to evaluate the examination paper, the authentic examination paper at schools, and they will determine the appropriateness, alignment, blah, blah, blah. So this is actually the cognitive skills will be covered. Okay. So in this case, I will ask them to do the mini scale research. They have to go to the schools, find set of multiple choice questions, subjective questions, and rubric, for example, for them to evaluate. Okay. So in this case, if you see that, okay, the PLO is cognitive skills, okay, and the CLO said that the student should be able to do this. Oh, identify the quality, appropriateness, alignment, implication for assessment practice. And then this one is demonstrate strategic and anticipatory is more on ESD, and integrity is VBE. Okay, everything that you write in the CLO should be assessed. And in MQA document, VBE and also the ESD should be assessed. Okay, because under the ESD, Educational Sustainable Development, there is three ways of assessing, three ways of delivery. Either you infuse, you embed, or you integrate. So many of lecturers will use it to integrate and to embed. Infuse tak nilai lah, you will not assess through the infusion. Okay, so these are the things that I should have in my rubric tau. Because these are the things that been stated in my CLO. Okay, so this is the prompt lah. Okay, let's say macam mana, how I want to do the CLO ni, so many things. So this is actually the prompt AI that I always share with the lecturers and also in my university. First of all, it should include the ABCD component. What is ABCD? If in MQA, actually they are using A for audience, then they use V for verb, but I use B for behavior. And then C sama condition, and MQA use S for standard, I use D for degree. Why? Because easy for me to remember. And ABCD is something widely used in education, means in US, in UK, they also use ABCD. MQA, they use AVCS. Macam tak cantik sangat kan? That's why if you write ABCD, ChatGPT ke AI will know what is ABCD component. Okay, incorporate VBE elements because we are asked for to do that. Incorporate ESD also, we have to do that. Okay, and then remains consistent with the, okay, this one, if let's say you already have the CLO, just you want to make it better, right? So you should put the CLO because the CLO actually the content, right? The syllabus, okay? But if you don't have the existing one, boleh buang je lah ni you can just omit this. And of course, written in a formal style suitable for course information. Okay, so you put your original or new CLO. Taxonomy level, very important. So either the C4, either the P4, either the A3. Condition. Condition here means that what you want students to do. So in my case, for example, I want them to go to the schools, evaluate the examination paper. So right here. So VBE, you choose lah what the university has mapping for you. Like UTM already mapped. For example, if let's say you are using PLO2, the mapping is to integrity. Okay, that one actually university has to map by their own, depends on the nature of the university lah. And then ESD also, we already mapped. For example, if PLO2, we have the strategic thinking and anticipatory thinking. Okay, it's already mapped. So I follow lah because UTM already do that. So I asked the AI to provide the revised CLO, breakdown of the ABCD. You can try this. So this is what will be, this is actually what is being generated by AI, this one. Okay, students is the A, audience. Analyze is the behavior. Okay, the condition is actually they have to use the actual examination. Okay, and then the degree, this one, the appropriateness, alignment, potential implication. And then the VBE integrity and the, what is called that? ESD is the strategic and anticipatory thinking. Okay. So when you have this, okay, then how you want to determine the criteria, because this is all the things that you have to assess in your rubric. So now we go for the criteria. Okay, the criteria. So just now you have the verb in the CLO, right? To analyze. Okay. And then you have the object of analysis, which is measure the exam questions. Okay, plus expected way of thinking just now, the strategic and anticipatory thinking, plus the value, which is the ESD just now, integrity. All of these you should put in the rubric criteria. Okay. So this is the verb tadi, ada kat sini Analyze, quality, strategy, integrity. Alright. Okay. So the first one, ni kalau buat sendirilah, actually you can go for AI. So, but you have to understand what happened beyond, okay, at the back of the thinking, the quality of the analysis, okay, the evaluation of appropriateness, the evaluation of alignment. These all three is actually the cognitive, the analyze, what the analysis, the cognitive development. PLO2 dia tu actually here. But strategic thinking and anticipatory thinking also for the cognitive. That is why it's important for the university to map between the ESD and also the PLO. So it can support, it's not something like nothing related. So easy for the lecturer to do the assessment. And also integrity. Integrity dia ni macam dia punya adjective je pun to, for example, to analyze with integrity. So you have to sit with your panel and you have to have a agreement, agree what is actually to be assessed for the PLO2 according to the CLO. Okay, how the quality of analysis, okay, assessing the extent to which students truly analyze exam question rather than merely describing them or providing general comment. So how about PLO2 in evaluation of appropriateness of the exam questions, assessing the student ability to determine whether the question is appropriate in terms of purpose, student level, and assessment context. So this one actually should be discussed with the panel. Okay, AI also can help. Evaluation of alignment, how the exam is aligned with the ability, with the syllabus, blah, blah, blah. Strategic thinking and anticipatory thinking, actually you can put directly from the OD of the ESD. Okay, ESD dah keluar dah, the guideline from the MQA, and also the VBE. VBE pun dah keluar dah, the OD from the MQA. You can take and put that and put in the context of your course. Okay. So now how I want to determine? I already have the criteria. So these all the criteria, quality of analysis, evaluation of alignment, thinking, strategic thinking, anticipation. So this I have 6 criteria. So now how I want to measure, how I want to determine the weightage. This is actually the half of answer from the previous question from the lecturer. So of course you will have your professional judgment, okay, to discuss with your panel, but there is some guideline. Okay. Find the PLO domain, determine which one is core and supportive criteria. If we see here, okay, from the CLO just now, these 4 things is actually the core. Okay, this one, 4 needs.
Sorry, Dr. Adibah.
Yeah.
Just to, because most of you maybe not be not from the education school. Can you just mention maybe the cost for this particular CLO?
Okay, the cost is educational assessment.
Okay, so because the examples are, because we're learning about CLO and everything, and the examples itself is about, so I just want to be clear if there's something.
Okay, understand. So, okay, the cost is educational assessment. As I said, the students, they have to go to the schools to evaluate the quality of the exam or the questions, okay, done by the teacher, that prepared by the teacher. Okay, so this is authentic assessment because they go for the real questions. Okay, like business study, you go for the real case study, right? For education, we go to the schools. Okay? So this 4 is actually the core. And the strategic thinking, anticipatory thinking, this one actually for the educational sustainable development. This is only supportive. And also the integrative also supportive. So to give the weightage, okay, this is the suggestion from the literature. The weightage of the core should be 70 to 80. And the supportive one should be from 20 to 30%. This is the range. Okay. So in this case, it's up to the panel. Now the professional judgment. Okay, I want to put this as 20%, 20%, 15%, 15%, 10%, 10%, 10%. So 70% of the core and 30% of the supportive criteria. Okay. All right. So number 11, now how I want to determine the scale of a rubric. Okay, the scale just now 1, 2, 3, 4 ke, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ke. Should I put the range ke? Tak payah range ke? So first of all, the rubric, the number of scales in the rubric, okay, should be determined by how many levels of performance. Okay, this one, if you discuss with stakeholders, if you discuss with panel, you can say that, okay, you think we can differentiate between 1 to 4 or 1 to 5. At first, you have to put lah the poor, average, good, okay, anti-prominent or advanced, okay. So then you put the criteria. So, but normally the best practice is 3 to 5 levels only. The best practice. And I can see that many of lecturers put 4. Ada 4 scale. Okay, but how it put 1, 2, 3, 4 ke, 0 to 2, 9 to 10 just now, it's up to you. But me, personally, I like if there is a variation. Okay, not only 1, 2, 3, 4. I like 1, the score is 0 to 2. Okay, scale 2, maybe 3 to 5. Okay, I like that because it gives some actually flexibility for the subject matter expert to evaluate. Okay, of course, to determine the scale number of the rubric, first, again, decide if the rubric for formative use or for summative use. But for formative or summative, normally the number of the scale is, again, from 3 to 5. Okay, unless you are using the single points rubric. The single points rubric memang only have 3 points. Okay, in the middle, the lower than the standard and above of the standard. Okay, but the rest, analytical and holistic, you can use either 3 to 5, right? So you have to know what is the differences between each level clearly. Okay, let's say you are giving the students to do the research proposal. Okay, in terms of the selecting the problem. So the highest part is when you think that they are able to do the process of selecting the problem with the authority body, authority resources, and triangulate with many existing research or journal. That is the highest. Okay, the least one is when they are only, for example, take the issues directly, for example, from the news, okay, from the maybe the statistic directly without comparison. That is how you differentiate between one scale to another scale. And when you differentiate, is if it is formative, go for the process. If it's product, then go for the appearance of the product, okay, the function of the product, okay, the end things that you want to measure, okay. And then consider student and task level. Okay, so match the complexity. This is the undergraduate student ke, master student ke, PhD students. Okay, look back at the MQF level. Okay, what actually the cognitive level from master, PhD, and also for the undergraduate. All right. As I said, the best practice normally from 3 to 5 levels and avoid level overloaded. Okay, janganlah sampai 10 scale. Okay, first, it's quite difficult to develop the description. Okay, and I believe if there is 10 scale, there is some redundancy there. Okay, some redundancy of the description from one scale to another scale. Okay, statistically, for those who are quite familiar in education, for example, we have the statistical analysis calling rating scale analysis using Rush measurement model, which is when you have the data, okay, the software can help you to determine either you are using the good scale or not. Either the lecturer can differentiate between the scale 1 and scale 2, scale 2 and scale 3 and scale 3 and scale 4. That one is statistical lah, but I'm not sharing specifically here. Okay, but for those who are quite familiar, or maybe you are also the psychometrician, you will know that many of us will use the item response theory or rush measurement model. But if not, you can use like this, okay, subjectively or using the professional judgment by having this kind of guidance. Okay. Question number 12. Okay, now I want to construct the description. I already know the number of my skill. So should I determine or should I state the highest one or the lowest one, the extreme high, the extreme low? Or some of them will go for the middle one. And then from the middle, it will move to the next one, the higher, the lower, and the least, and the most, something like that. Okay. So basically, by the literature, it is good if you go for the extreme one, the highest one and the lowest one. Then you move towards the middle. Okay, unless if you are using the single point rubric, of course you go for the middle one, the standard one. So normally that is why when you do a rubric, if let's say you have 5 skills, the middle normally is actually the, if grade line, it should be the B plus, something that at least you want them to get within that 14 weeks. Okay, so more than B plus, okay, the scale number 4 is something better. And scale number 5 means that outstanding, which is maybe actually you don't expect them to have it now, but they can have it now. Maybe it's actually for students with year 2, but in year 1, if they can achieve, mashallah, alhamdulillah. Okay, all right. So question number 13. Now, how should I know that my rubric is valid? Okay, when say valid, valid means that the things is supposed to measure what it's supposed to measure. That is the validity, convenience, definition. Measuring what is supposed to be measured. Okay, so a rubric is valid when it provides credible evidence. Okay, from the rubric, students will use the rubric to provide an evidence about their process or about their end product. Okay, and it's truly reflect the learning outcome, either P&O or CNO that you want to assess. Okay, so of course, the first one, you have to see either your rubric is actually outcome match, task match, and also, of course, the construct match. This one, that's why triple match. Ada 3 sebenarnya. The rubric is matched or aligned with the task, or I go with the flow line. It is aligned with the learning outcome. Okay. Is it aligned with the construct, the criteria just now? And is it aligned with the task? Okay. If let's say it's psychomotor, it should be psychomotor task lah, not the affective task. Okay. It should be here. Right. Then rubric must measure the specific domain. Okay, as I said just now, because although you're having the same PLO, you might have a different domain. For example, communication skill, it can be either psychomotor or affective. Okay, right. So determine first either in your CI you put as a psychomotor ke, affective ke, or cognitive, right? Okay. Then performance level must be clearly distinguished to explain score using the rubric alone. This is the best practice also, which is the rater agreement ni. Normally, we will take a sample from students' work, maybe 5 students sample work. And then we will sit among our panel. We do the workshop. Using the rubric, we try to mark the same assignment among us using the rubric. Then we discuss. Okay, why I give this 4, why you give 5. Then we come with the shared understanding. Okay, shared conclusion. That's why here lah, pilot and refine. Test the rubric on the sample work and revise based on performance. Okay, you do to the students, and at the same time also you can go with your panel to take the example, the sample of the rubric and sample of the students' work, and then you discuss together. Do the workshop lah. One day cukup dah. Alright. So now that's not valid. So valid means that it aligned with the outcome, aligned with the criteria, and aligned with the task, aligned with the domain that you want to measure. Okay, that is the most important lah, more on the content and construct things that you want to measure, right? And then reliable. So reliable means that consistency, and this only can be done, okay, if let's say you do what just now I suggest. For example, you ask the students, you ask the lecturers to get the sample, okay, and then mark all of you and see how the discrepancy happened. Okay, that's why if 2 qualified lecturers use the rubric on the same student work, will they give similar judgment? If yes, means that the rubric actually showing the reliability. If not, means that the rubric is not yet reliable, still have the ambiguity, the language maybe still confusing, maybe the adjective that is like too ambiguous until I also don't know what do you mean by good here, bad there. That's why don't use the word good in your description. How good is this? With the some description, some details, not only good, not good, poor, something like that, right? So this is what I told you just now. Select 3 to 5 pieces of student work. Ask 2 or more assessors to score them independently. Then compare the score and discuss where differences happen and why it happens. So this one can be happen in one day workshop. So if the score are mostly close, so means that it is reliable. But if let's say the discrepancy is big, again, I said it's recommended to improve the consistency in the rubric use. Okay. Okay, question number 15. Okay, we have 15 minutes. Sempat insyaAllah, okay? How do I know that my rubric is fair? Okay. Oh, this one is sorry, tak puang pun lagi. So the fair of the rubric, okay? First, is fair enough to make sure that your rubric is measuring what's supposed to be measured. So align with outcome. Okay. It's fair enough when you give the students the rubric to the student at the beginning of the week. Especially for formative lah, summative no. So it's good enough because transparent. Okay. It's fair enough if, let's say, the students and also the lecturer, when they read your rubric, they are having the like a same understanding. Okay, same interpretation, not so much different. Okay. It's good enough if, let's say, your criteria in your rubric is something straightforward and relevant. So please avoid the irrelevance one. Okay, focus on analysis rather than over-rewarding factor like formative. Okay, for example, just now, we have the cognitive, kan, PLO2. So for the PLO2, the criteria should be the relevant one. The one that I show you, the core criteria. Not suddenly your criteria is the attendance, okay, and then the formatting, the design, which is nothing to do with the PLO2. Go avoid that, right? And of course, inclusive. Inclusive means that regardless of the races, regardless of the nationality, regardless of the geographical, maybe you are using the internet for your task, okay, students have the equal chances to succeed for that particular assessment. Okay, for example, don't do the assessment or rubric which is they have to pay for the certain AI. Use the free AI that can be accessed by all the students, regardless either they are rich or poor. Okay, they are easy to get access internet or not. Okay, so that one is we call as the inclusive design. Regardless of any demographical background, they have an equal chances to be succeed in that particular assessment by referring to your rubric. Okay. Question number 16. Can I use the same rubric when measuring students' formative progress in class? Okay, as I said just now, formative assessment, we have to give chances for the students to improve. Okay, so we have to give feedback. So the feedback, please use the rubric. Either you want to use the single point rubric based on the analytical rubric, or you can use the analytical rubric, okay, directly. Okay. So yes, of course, the answer is yes. You can use the same rubric, okay, when the students come and show you the draft, not the draft of the assignment, the draft of the chunk of the task that you give them in the class, you give the feedback, okay? You say, refer to the rubric. If let's say this is how you select the problem, I will give you only 2. Because you take straightly from the news, okay? And then you only triangulate it with 1 resources. So it's not enough, okay, for the personal skills. Okay, so you show the rubric and you got that. What next if you want to improve your score for your final product later? Okay, so you say lah. So you see, this is what you lack. So you go for the scale number 3, number 4, number 5. So they know, oh, I have to, at least I have to do the triangulation from the authority journal, okay, from the authority body, the statistic and so on and so forth. Okay, right. So can I can use that. So can I use the same rubric every semester? Ini ramai lah yang guna kan. Can I use the same rubric every semester? Of course. Yes, you can. Okay, a rubric may be reused across semester, provided, okay, it is having the same nature. Okay, means that don't use it without any justification or never be reused uncritically. Okay, when it is appropriate, acceptable, okay, the alignment are same, then you can use the same one. Okay, provided also you do the periodic review with your panel. Okay, so question number 80. Should there be a standard rubric for measuring different assessment, even if they measure the same PLO? This is what I said just now. Many university and also lecturers said, Doctor, why don't you develop one rubric? And this is rubric for cognitive skill. So all of us will follow. This is the rubric for communication skills. All of us will follow. So I said, no, cannot. Because although you are having the same PLO, okay, doesn't mean that the task to measure that PLO is the same. Okay, maybe you can use the common standard where appropriate, but adapt the rubric to the task and evidence. Okay, this is an example. Let's say the PLO is cognitive. One lecturer measure the cognitive through the oral presentation. So the criteria might be the quality of reasoning, the responsiveness to the questions, the clarity of the explanation. The other lecturer measure the cognitive through the poster presentation. So the criteria might be the clarity of synthesis, visual organization of the idea, and accuracy of the interpretation of the information, for example. And another lecturer used the mini-scale research, okay, which is maybe should have the PLO2 in terms of the analysis of the problem, okay, the use of the evidence, and also the justification of the finding. So you can see, even if two assessment or more than one assessment measure the same PLO, they do not always need the same standard rubric because they are having the different criteria because of the nature of the task itself. So what matter is whether the assessment generate the same kind of evidence of learning. If yes, then you can use the same rubric. If the criteria are different, the evidence unit is different, then you have to have another kind of rubric. You cannot use the same rubric, although you are measuring the same PLO. Okay, question number 19. If I am measuring the same PLO, but shift from the psychomotor domain to the affective domain. Now different domain, the same PLO. So should I change the rubric? The answer is yes, although you are having the same PLO. Okay, now see. Let's say the same PLO, which is professionalism. Professionalism maybe PLO 11. Okay, ethics and professionalism. One professionalism, you write in your CIS P4, psychomotor. P4 means that is a mechanism. Affective, which is A3, valuing. Okay, so if psychomotor under the professionalism means that you want to see how the students can do the correct execution of teaching technique, let's say in education, and proper using of teaching aids, okay, and do the classroom management professionally. Okay, but for affective, how actually the student shows the ethical responsibility, professional attitude, responsiveness to student, and respect and care in interaction. So means that there is no specific literature say that this particular PLO must be psychomotor. Communication skills must be psychomotor. Tak ada, There is no literature saying that personal skills must be psychomotor. No. Only cognitive and knowledge must be cognitive. Okay? And then the practical skills must be psychomotor because that one, the three of them are the technical skills. But the rest of generic skills, it depends on the task and the nature. It can be both. Okay, for example, this one, professionalism. It can be measured through the psychomotor domain and affective domain. So in this case, of course, your rubric will be different. Okay. Okay, then the final questions. Okay. How can I ensure that lecturers use the rubric accurately without significant discrepancy? So this one actually has been told before. Okay, so which is they need the calibration, check interpretation, use the same sample, okay, check together, use the rubric, do moderation, Okay, and then apply the same standard and consistency. Okay, consistently means that if let's say this is the scale 5, so what do you mean by scale 5? Then all of us have a shared agreement like this. Okay? So from time to time, actually, this thing can be changed, can be improved. Right? It's not like one time you make a rubric is perfect. Maybe the rubric perfect, but the implementation, okay, also should be improved from time to time. Okay. Okay. So I also, this is the bonus question. Okay. Some people said, why use rubric? Okay. It will what? Stifle the student creativity. Okay, yes. If you are developing the very rigid rubric, then yes. But if let's say you are measuring the rubric, okay, creatively, okay, and of course, appropriately, okay, okay, instead of you are using the floor versus ceiling concept. So a good rubric, okay, should set a floor minimum standard, but there is no ceiling limiting the output. It can be better, better, and more. Okay, doesn't mean that if the students uh perform better, you say, oh no, 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 until 5 only, until 5. No, if can go more, then go more. Okay. So the Stifling rubric will say that, for example, your task should be have only 3 slides, 2 colors, and 1 specific font. Let's say this is the holistic rubric. Okay. But the creative rubric said that visual impact that enhance the message or evidence of an original perspective. This one is actually open for the creativity and subjectivity rather than this one very rigid. Okay. Structured versus freedom. So creativity often thrives within constraints. Without any guidelines, students may feel overwhelmed by choices parallel. Banyak sangat ni, too much. So actually rubric is provide them the structure, the scaffolding. It's not to stifle their creativity. Jadi, so they can focus their energy on the creative expression rather than wondering about the basic requirement because the basic requirement already been stated in the rubric. And also assessing process over product, especially for the formative. Okay, so if you only grade the final product, okay, like A, B, C, D only, okay, of course lah, that one is quite rigid, and also the students will feel like examination. So make your rubric, which is you can reward the student for attempting a difficult technique, even if it wasn't 100%. So it's like they are using the rubric, they know that they have to take a risk if they want to go for the better skill. Okay. So grade how they pivoted their idea based on initial failures. Okay, you can, because you give the feedback, okay, and then because they improve the assignment or the performance, so you can say, okay, now I can give you 4 rather than 3 last time. And also explicitly define originality as looking at the problem from a non-traditional angle. So they know that they have the basic, but they have to do something value added to the task to see the originality or the innovation about the assessment or about the task that given to them. Okay. So I think this is some of the guideline, okay, which is I took from the AI, how to design a creativity friendly rubric from the book, the 2 books that I refer just now. Okay, so you can see what to avoid and what to use. Okay, this one I think I already also explained just now. Okay, so this is the prompt for AI. Okay, from AI for rubric. Sorry, this is the prompt AI for rubric. Okay, first ask the AI to become an expert in rubric development. Create a rubric that measures students. Okay, put your PLO, let's say cognitive skill. Make sure the component is literally important. Why? This one is, let's say you don't know what the criteria that you want to put, you say here. Okay, component is literally important in measuring students' cognitive skills. Okay, at the higher education level, master, PhD, or UG. Suggest weightage for each component according to the significance in contributing to the cognitive skills. Okay, suggest 4 scale. This one up to you, but I put like this: 4 scales with score. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4. So have 4 skills actually. Ensure the description emphasize the process if this is formative. If you are product, put product. of shaping cognitive skills rather than measuring the product. So if product, you can delete this lah. The assessment product for this task is let's say, mini scale research, portfolio. What is the final product? So create the rubric in an editable table with Microsoft Word. The criteria of the rubric should be aligned with the construct of cognitive skills, okay, by MQF. Okay, because I know the MQF OD for the learning outcome and also general literature review. This is for value added. Please add in the rubric the VBE, value-based education. Okay, if your university make it compulsory. So you put the specific value. For example, in our university, PLO2, so the specific value is the integrity. So put integrity here. And education sustainable development. In our case, PLO2 is mapped to the strategic thinking and also the anticipatory thinking. Okay. And the mark for this assessment is, let's say, 40 marks. Okay. So, okay, I will stop sharing for a while to show you some of the example of the rubric that generated by AI, which is when I look, mashallah, is good actually to be used. Okay. Let me see which one. Okay. Okay, I will share. Okay. So this one also to to measure the PLO2. Okay. About problem solving. I don't remember because this is actually not mine. This is another participant that time they do. So the weight actually because only 20%. So the same weight for the problem framing, planning of analytical approach and justification. This one is the core criteria. While this one also the core criteria, but less weightage. Okay. And analytical reasoning is supportive. Okay. Because this is like presentation, the end product lah, which is they want the students to do the presentation. Okay. So this is the process, if you can see. Okay. All right. So this actually the rubric, okay, which is produced by the Prof AI just now. Okay, but if let's say you want to, of course, if you want to revise, okay, to improve it from time to time according to your context, mafi mushkilah, tafadhal, you can do that. Okay, right. Okay, I think I open for the question if I have before I go to the two final slides. Doctor,
I think we
if there
can,
is any questions.
yeah, we can proceed with the final slides
Okay, can proceed. Okay, let me share again.
because we are already past the time.
Oh, yeah. Alamak. Past. Sorry. Baik. Bismillah. Okay, now I share back the Canva. Okay. So basically, I also give the example from AI for the assessment. Okay, because you cannot do the rubric without the assessment, right? So if let's say you also think like how to determine the assessment, so align with the put the CLO, PLO, put your course or your syllabus, your topic, your VBE, your ESD if have, and also the task content. Inshallah, AI will suggest the good one lah, inshallah. And you also can what? You can moderate, check and balance lah, either you want to add or not. Okay, so the two final slide actually is just to say that the Quran is a divine rubric. Okay, we also have a rubric actually for every Muslim. Okay, which is already stated there. Okay, if you want to go to the Jannah, these are the things, these are the rubric that we have to do. Okay, it shapes our choices, refines our character, and ultimately bears witness to where we stand before Allah in the hereafter. Okay, and when we use rubric with amanah, it becomes more than assessment tool. It becomes a means of nurturing growth, protecting dignity, and guiding students toward who they are meant to be, which is they are meant to be the Khalifah in the world. So we see sometimes it's like nothing, it's just a rubric. But philosophically, beyond the rubric, there is a big responsibility that we have to bring together to help them to be the better Khalifah and for the sake of our civilization, actually. Okay, so that's all, Dr. Ashraf. Maybe I open or maybe you can end the session. It's up to you. Okay, thank you, Doctor.
If you can still join, stay for maybe 3 questions out because there are.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Yes.
All right. So we will entertain the question given earlier. Maybe you can respond very briefly. The first was asking about how to know the kinds of thinking to include in our CLO, SDG, and integrity, etc.
Okay. Okay, that one is actually how to know. Okay, first, actually, MQA already released the guideline for ESD and also for the value-based education. Okay, they open generally. Okay, umum lah. Okay, so all universities, especially under the Timbalan Net Chancellor Academic, okay, Academic Vice Chancellor, okay, under the Teaching Learning Center, okay, they already do the workshop in our university to map the PLO. So what kind of thinking to actually already being started by MQA, okay, especially the ESD, okay, it's already list what kind of educational, it's not only thinking, have another thing also, so you can refer. Okay, I also have, if you want to see after this, and then you map with the PLO. So actually we met with the PNO because we want to make the lecturers work easier. It's not for, again, it's not uh to make them not creative, but to have the shared understanding, okay, of the, because if you realize MQA quite fast to give a new thing, and sometimes we are not, we just want to get familiar with one thing, suddenly they come with another thing. Okay, so we just think that one is maybe for the betterment lah. We take it positively. So how to know? First, look back at the guidance of or the guideline given by MQA. It's already open in the website, okay, in the internet. So of course the university, I'm not sure either IIUM already have moved forward for that or not, but many universities already met the VBE and also ESD towards the learning outcome. So that one is actually every single university will maybe have a different mapping. Okay, all right.
Second question is where was the inclusive? This one showed also the referred to the one of the slide you showed, the
Yes,
5 pillars of a fair rubric.
correct. The inclusivity.
Yeah, so
Correct.
inclusive, including students with special needs, or should we make a different rubrics or scaling for them?
Okay, okay. First of all, like this. We believe that all the students, when they enter the university, they actually have uh, they have fulfilled the specific requirement. The homogeneity is there actually in terms of their capability of the thinking, the achievement, the results. They already have the face of basic requirement that they have the similarity. Okay, but coming to the special ed, coming to the neurodiversity, right? Okay, that one, I think it's more on the learning style and learning method rather than the rubric. Okay, so the rubric is better to have one, but as I said, one not necessarily rigid. If let's say your rubric can cater to the differences in terms, because when one to say the differences is so many. Okay, there is an autism student, there is an ADHD student, there is the, so many. Okay, so of course, I think it's not so uh, feasible to do that in the rubric. So to cater that inclusive learning, inclusive design that, I prefer you to do it in your classroom as a learning and teaching strategist rather to have a different rubric for a different student accordingly. Okay, that's my answer.
The last question is, reward is the bonus mark or the highest mark in the rubric?
Oh, reward. Which one? There is no supposed to be, there is no where is the reward? I must say somewhere in reward. Actually, in the rubric criteria should be only something related to the PLO.
Mm.
Okay, if you want to give reward, it's nothing to do with the rubric. Reward, just give reward. Okay, not take the mark from the reward. You
Mm.
understand? If let's say the student have done something better than five, okay, the five scale, okay, so you give five. But if he can do something better, so you can reward in the class, you can give present, you can do a poster, maybe the high achievement in the university, but not to give an extra mark suddenly six there. No, the mark is five. Okay, so it's like attendance, right? Attendance is something that should not be in the rubric. You should not give the marks because of attendance, because attendance is nothing to do with any PLO. Okay, but if they come to all your classes, maybe you can give some reward. You say, okay, who comes to my class all without any absence? Okay, I will treat you lunch for at the end of the semester. Just like that. Okay, no extra marks. If let's say you get 79, I will give you 80 because you come to my class without any absence. So it's that one is wrong in terms of assessment. Okay, that.
All right, I think that's all. Thank you very much, Dr. Adibah.
Sama-sama.
The time passed very quickly and we've learned a lot. And very interesting
Alhamdulillah.
that you kind of prepared it through the Q&A. And I think that suits the audience here. Majority of the
Alhamdulillah.
audience, usually when we conduct webinars, which is open like this,
Yeah,
majority would be those 60 to 70% will be those who are more than 10 years of teaching experience. That
Alhamdulillah.
is, and I think the way that you conducted this has allowed us to gain a lot to improve our teaching and learning, inshallah. So,
InsyaAllah.
can we take a photo before we end the session? So I'll welcome everyone to switch on your webcam so that we can take a photo. Okay. Sister Hilda will assist us, inshallah. So there's a lot. Now 140, we had the highest number around 200 something,
Okay.
somewhere in the middle of the presentation. Okay, Sister
Okay.
Hilda. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Okay. Assalamualaikum. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Hold on. Okay, next page.
Maybe just the three first pages.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that's all from us. Thank you very much once again, Associate Professor Dr.
Terima
Adibah
kasih.
Latif for sharing a valuable webinar with us. And then to all who has participated and joined this webinar, hopefully we gain a lot. Please fill in and complete the evaluation form and we will email to you the recording as well as the evaluation form and the materials for this session, inshallah. Once again, thank you, Dr. Adibah,
Terima kasih
and
juga.
to all. I will adjourn and we will meet you and see you in the following CPD webinars. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih.
Thank you. Terima kasih, Dokter.
Sama.